This week in fantasy movies, we're going back to Rohan. War of the Rohirrim comes to theaters, and this is only the start of all the new stuff Peter Jackson's team wants to bring to the world. Plus, the anime industry is simultaneously cracking down on piracy while also doing more dumb shit that will drive people to piracy. And we've got more updates than you can shake a stick at for Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and more. Strap yourselves in, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's time to venture forth into the unknown.
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
Too late! We're already on our way! It's This Week in Fantasy Movies! Starting off the trailers this week, it's back! We got our first look at the Wheel of Time Season 3.
I have seen 1,000 futures, and every future where I lived, Ran dies.
Jeff Bezos has a lot riding on this, since he still wants to nab the Game of Thrones audience. So this trailer ramps up the tension, the drama, the stakes, and of course, all the angst.
You cannot afford to fail again.
But hey, we get more of this seminal fantasy epic. More fantasy is more better. Coming to Amazon Prime on March 13th.
I look at you, and I just want to be the fairest of them all.
Then, Disney dropped a new trailer for Snow White, taking us into all the kingdom-shattering stakes they added for this live-action remake.
This was my father's kingdom. A place of fairness.
But the biggest thing they added seems to be, actual character motivations. But those ugly CGI dwarves might hurt its chances when they could have just casted real actors.
You know, I really don't remember you being this opinionated.
Coming to theaters March 21st.
We're doing a special Christmas everywhere all at once.
Disney also dropped a trailer for this year's romp of a Doctor Who Christmas special.
You have no idea what you've started.
And Paramount Plus gave us a proper trailer for Section 31, the first direct-to-streaming Star Trek movie.
I'm giving you a chance to get back in on the action on a galactic scale.
Michelle Yeoh reprises her role from Discovery and teams up with a bunch of Federation spies to lead a secret mission that's more willing to get messy.
It's just a place for people to bend the rules.
Coming January 24th. Then Apple served up a trailer for Severance, where the twists get twistier.
So what the hell did you guys see up there?
The cult shenanigans get weirder.
What you all did was one of the most painful moments in the history of this company.
And the work-life balance gets even more unbalanced.
Why did you do this? What is this all about?
Coming January 17th. Apple also introduced us to The Gorge, which asks, what if Taylor Swift's music video for Love Story was an action thriller with global stakes?
The Gorge is the door to hell. And we're standing guard at the gate.
Premieres on Valentine's Day. Angel Studios has a new trailer for Gabriel and the Guardians, showing off even more of its absolutely bonkers science fiction world building and all of the He-Man vibes.
I am a celestial guardian, defender of creation, a light that pierces the darkness.
Premiering February 12th. Amazon finally gave us a real trailer for Invincible Season 3.
We can be the good guys, or we can be the guys that save the world. We can't be both.
And the furries are gonna love this one. The emo-laden opening credits for Valkyrie, an independent animated series about a young wolf who's looking for paradise to call home. We have a new anime season starting in a few weeks, so Crunchyroll has new trailers for How to Make Magic in Another World, Farmagia adapting a smartphone farming simulator game, Season 2 of the romantasy anime Unnamed Memory, Someday Will I Be the Greatest Alchemist, another power fantasy story about a protagonist who's the strongest person even though he's got a worthless skill. Season 2 of Fire Force, which looks like it's about fighting fires, but it's actually a battle anime about fighting with fire. Night of the Living Cat, a bonkers anime set in a catastrophic apocalypse, and when our protagonist is touched by a cat, he also turns into a cat. And Teogonia, a fantasy anime themed after feudal Japan, where demi-humans are a regular thing, but magic is a rare hidden talent. Finally, The War of the Rohirrim has a trailer that lasts 8 whole minutes.
It is not easy to hold on to hope when an ill wind blows.
You won't get any spoilers from us, but it does set up a little mystery, a little action, and a whole lot of winter vibes. You won't want to miss this movie. It's coming to theaters this weekend. And part of the reason we're gassing you up about The War of the Rohirrim is because co-producer Philippa Boyan says that there's a lot of new material they're working on in Middle-earth, and it's easy to trust that given enough time to marinate, Peter Jackson's team will treat this world with love and care and creativity. Plus, they absolutely do have more standalone stories to tell. Boyan's teased in one interview that they're looking at a potential new epic trilogy in the same format as the original Lord of the Rings story. And that's on top of the hunt for Gollum, which they're currently working on. In another interview, Boyens admitted it wouldn't be happening if it weren't for the War of the Rohirrim. In their minds, doing an animated film was way lower stress than another live-action movie. Plus, hey, now they get to lean on the anime community as well as the existing Lord of the Rings fan base. Looking ahead, though, the whole team really wants Viggo Mortensen to come back to play Aragorn for the hunt for Gollum, but they can't get a confirmation out of him yet because he always insists on reading a script first to see if the role speaks to him, and they don't have a script yet. Looking elsewhere in the Middle-earth franchise, showrunners Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne have confirmed that the Rings of Power is moving forward with Season 3, and everyone's playing this up as a relief, but let's not forget that Amazon is still under contract with the Tolkien estate to make 5 seasons of this show. So it's never a question of if they'll make more, it's only a question of when. And for a throwback, Max finally announced that they secured the rights to the 1970s animated Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies. Now you too can stream all the nostalgia-laden rotoscoping to terrorize your kids as your parents terrorized you. Looking at Star Wars, Ahsoka Season 2 is definitely happening, and Dave Filoni is working on writing it. But just him. He's the sole writer so far on the show, and while Dave clearly has a lot of authority on Ahsoka, it might be nice to have some Clone Wars writers to add to the creativity. Only time will tell. People are still reeling from the cancellation of the Acolyte, and the racism that came along with it was a surprise to some. Among those are the Acolyte's own Lee Jung-jae, who said he was shocked by the comments made about himself and others on the show. Sadly, this isn't the first time that Star Wars actors have faced racism from so-called fans. Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose, was bullied off of social media and basically lost her spot as a main character in Rise of Skywalker. Whether or not Lee should have been surprised isn't the point. The point is that Disney is caving to the worst fans and making Star Wars worse in the process. Look, there are lots of great videos about overcoming tokenism in Star Wars, and those are worth watching. After this video, finish this one first. But sometimes what's missing is what diversity brings. Think about how much better Empire was with the addition of Lando Calrissian. Besides background players in the original film, he was the first character of color. Actors bring experiences with them that can add to a story. That's kind of the point of them. Samuel L. Jackson was a welcome sight in the prequels. Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian, Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, and Diego Luna as Andor are favorite characters. And for his part, Giancarlo Esposito had a great villain in Moff Gideon. And this doesn't even touch on other aspects of diversity. It's a long-standing joke that Leia is literally the only woman in the galaxy, so seeing more women in Star Wars was refreshing to so many people, despite what the incels online have to say. And I'm sure at least some people in wheelchairs were happy to see Klieg Lars in the Clone Wars. Diversity makes these stories feel more real, and the places feel more lived in, something Star Wars has always strived for. What's more, the existence of these characters doesn't take away your joy of your favorite character. If Han is your favorite character, he can still be your favorite. Most fans get this and are either happy to see more diversity or neutral to it. But Disney chooses to listen to the loud, obnoxious, so-called fans. It's like basing an audience reaction at a stand-up routine on the drunk heckler in the back. Come on, Disney, don't feed the trolls. Make Star Wars for those of us that actually want to watch it. For his part, Lee had a pretty positive attitude, saying, "I can only have faith that racism will end someday, even though it's going to be hard." So if you like the show or Lee's performance, maybe show some love, because delivering that good of a performance in your second language slays pretty severely. And now, because of the Acolyte being cancelled, we may never get to see the cool stuff that was planned for Darth Plagueis. We'll have to settle for some vague info from Manny Jacinto at Fan Expo San Francisco. When asked about Plagueis and Manny's character Kamir's connection to him, he teased some developments we probably won't see, but he still doesn't want to spoil. Maybe if fans make enough noise, we could get something out of it, but for now, all we know is that there were plans at one point. In lighter Star Wars news, if you think Grogu is cute, you have got to see him as an anime character. Debuting at Tokyo Comic-Con last Friday, we got the first in a series of shorts called Grogu, Cutest in the Galaxy. Ah! You could see a new short every month from Star Wars Japan on Instagram. Harry Potter is back in the news. Again. And while we could take the time to talk about how it's problematic to cast a black man in a villainous role where there are no major black characters, or how writing for this show is a sign that you're willing to throw trans people under the bus for a quick pound, we're just going to tell you again that she who will not be named, you know who you are, needs to touch grass, and HBO needs to cancel this series before they hurt someone. They're already on the right track by pushing the release date back to 2027. Now they just have to amend it to never. Looking over at Gur Martin, The Hollywood Reporter has a big profile on the short films he financed, adapting 4 short stories by Howard Waldrop. But dedicated viewers of the channel will already know that we covered this when Sam interviewed Martin's director of film and media, Elias Gallegos. Also, the blogosphere really wants to convince you, yes, specifically you, that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is coming this summer, 2025. But it kinda looks like it's just people getting their hopes up. The discrepancy is all based on a Wells Fargo summit where J.B. Perrette, president of global streaming for Warner Brothers, mentioned A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is coming summer of next year. But in Deadline's report, they couldn't confirm this and pointed to other sources who said it's still on track for the end of 2025. If it comes sooner than that, super, slay, we love that. But please, don't take things as fact until they are actually confirmed. Thanks! Then, in anime, normally people could watch all of the pirate-themed anime One Piece with Crunchyroll's ad-supported tier. But apparently, that's not enough anymore. Since Crunchyroll announced on Monday that it's going to start paywalling huge sections of the show. Now, for plenty of companies, this would make sense. It's a cutthroat capitalist move, especially in the face of Netflix gaining a strong foothold with the One Piece franchise. But it's especially ironic given the context. See, back in the yonder years, Crunchyroll started off as a full-on piracy site, taking rips of animes with rushed subtitles and posting them online for people to watch with ads. There was a time where you couldn't even talk about it on anime forums because it was straight up illegal. And of course, anime fans did what anime fans always do when their comfort zone gets disrupted. And they proudly declared that the great pirate era has begun. Yo-ho! That's right, online fans declared they're going to take to the high seas and find their One Piece in other ways. Will anime fans come crawling back to Crunchyroll in the face of adversity? Will Sony back down from trying to squeeze out more profit? Find out next week on Dragon Ball Z. Actually, don't answer that, because in a report by Japanese broadcaster NHK, a Japanese government agency has created a new AI whose sole job is to crack down on exactly the type of piracy sites that Crunchyroll used to be. Citing an estimated industry-wide loss of 2 trillion yen per year, the Agency for Cultural Affairs dropped 300 million yen to develop an AI system to detect anime and manga piracy sites and issue takedown notices. And we know its AI is already putting in the legwork because 3 of the biggest anime piracy sites went out of commission this week. On Wednesday, the Asian media piracy network Dramacool announced it was shutting down a bunch of its own sites due to mounting pressure from copyright holders. Then on Saturday, the biggest Spanish-language anime piracy site posted a farewell message, pointing to Sony's 60% market share as a factor. And during all of this, GoGo Anime stopped posting material with no word at all from its Discord moderators, who are usually in the know about these kinds of site developments. Now, companies like Sony would prefer if all these anime pirates would just pay for this stuff. we don't blame them. But the standard argument is that creators need to earn a living. However, we all know how creators get paid. During production, and never enough. So here's how it all works. Productions raise a bunch of money up front to hire the writers, directors, storyboard artists, in-between artists, composer, voice actors, the works. They pay the whole team very low wages because the anime industry is notorious for exploiting its workers in a country riddled with worker exploitation, but the artists do it because they love the work. Then the studio puts it out into the world. The people making the show already got all the money they're ever gonna get. But now the studio gets to reap all the rewards. It's a common refrain that these studios are lucky to break even on the anime itself, between streaming licenses and physical media sales. Just like in Hollywood, they make most of their money on merchandise. And believe us when we say there's a lot of anime merchandise out there. And guess who's buying up all that merch? That's right, it's those same otaku pirates these studios are trying to quash. See, the inconvenient little truth the studios don't want you to know is that, on the whole, pirates are actually more likely to spend money on the media they love. For example, back in 2011, when Game of Thrones was the new hotness, the show quickly became the most pirated series of all time. HBO wouldn't admit it at the time, but we knew through a former employee who was close to the topic that they were quietly thrilled at the numbers because it meant people ravenously wanted to see it no matter what it took. At the time, the barrier to entry was super high. You needed to have cable and then be able to pay an extra subscription on top of that just to get HBO. But they knew that if they clamped down on the pirates and made Game of Thrones even less accessible, people would give up because the investment was way too high. So instead, HBO responded by building HBO Max, a dedicated streaming service with a lower barrier to entry. It's not a solution for every problem, but in this case, it worked for most people. Between that and physical media sales, HBO saw its profits go up from all the people who wanted their backstabbing and their dragons. On the flip side, when the notorious piracy site Mega Upload closed in 2012, Hollywood expected it to shore up their profits. Instead, they actually saw zero growth and possibly even negative growth in the box office, especially with mid-budget films like high-profile comedy movies. The fact of the matter is, whether they're buying the Blu-rays after the fact, picking up merchandise along the way, or getting their friends hooked on new stuff, pirates are still part of the broader ecosystem that is the film and TV industry. What's more, when anime of any size are available on these unauthorized platforms, it gives people a really low barrier to entry and makes it easier to encourage friends to see a show before it gets popular or discover an obscure anime they wouldn't otherwise get to see because of international licensing problems. This is especially crucial in underserved low-income territories like Africa, Latin America, and Central Asia, where legal access to these shows is spotty at best. But there's still people in those parts of the world who want to see good quality shows, so it's no wonder that they would turn to the high seas to get what the corporate overlords deemed more trouble than it's worth. Pirates go to the trouble because to their community, it is worth it. In this renewed crackdown, I don't see Sony expanding its operations in Nigeria, Paraguay, or Kyrgyzstan. In the end, these megacorporations need to learn that when they tighten their grip and sacrifice viewers at the altar of quarterly profits, they actually hurt their overall business for the long term. They drive fans away from anime at all, and they cut off their most effective tool for word-of-mouth viral marketing. Well, we're already talking about money stuff, so sounds like it's time to get to the numbers. On the series chart, Skeleton Crew debuts at number 6, while Dune Prophecy drops down to number 10, and From slips out of the number 1 spot. But in streaming movies, The Substance reclaims the top spot, trading places with Gladiator. Alien Romulus holds at number 3, and The Wild Robot dips to number 10. At the box office, Moana 2, Wicked, and Gladiator 2 all hold their spots from last week, and Red 1 is knocked down another peg by another new release. Interstellar pops back in at number 6 for its 10-year anniversary, and Solo Leveling and Y2K debut at numbers 7 and 8. Oh, and the Wicked movie soundtrack debuted at number 2 on the Billboard charts, breaking the record for highest ever debut for a film adaptation of a stage musical. You might be thinking, what? It couldn't even hit number 1? But you've got to know the context. The last time a musical's movie adaptation soundtrack debuted in the top 5 was over 20 years ago, when Chicago set the record at number 4. Speaking of record breakers, on to the quick news. Terrifier 3 is getting a Christmas re-release with new bonus material, and filmmaker Damien Leone confirmed he's developing a 4th movie in the franchise. Buried at the end of a Disney News Roundup in Variety, we got word that Jerry Bruckheimer has 2 versions of a script in development for a new Pirates of the Caribbean film. Looking at Fallout, Walton Goggins shared a behind-the-scenes photo from the makeup process for Season 2. And production has wrapped on Season 2 of Wednesday. High Dive is finally releasing the English dub for Dungeon People. Hatakawa teased an anime adaptation of its manga, The Lady Blessed by the Gorilla God is Adored by the Royal Knights, and Ascendants of a Bookworm will get a new season of its anime adaptation. Netflix won a 7-figure bidding war to option Quicksilver, the romantasy novel that took book talk by storm. This is the first part of the Fae and Alchemy series, where a human rebel binds herself to a Fae warrior, so they can hop between realms and eventually get her home where she belongs. Deadline puts this deal on the same level as Summit Entertainment getting the rights to Twilight or Lionsgate adapting The Hunger Games, so we're really excited to see Netflix develop this. Elizabeth Cantillon will produce the adaptation, hot off the heels of executive producing Alien Romulus. Hell of a resume. That slays, actually. I love that very, very much. 2 of my favorite things. The Fae and aliens. Finally, Colin Callender's production company Playground has picked up the rights to Alan Moore's new epic fantasy graphic novel, The Great When. The story follows Dennis Knuckleyard, who works at a secondhand bookshop in post-World War II London, who stumbles across a fictitious book that's not supposed to exist, but it does. Now Dennis has to return it to the supernatural realm it came from. Along the way, he has to dodge criminals, artists, and the occult before he endangers his home and the version of London where the book came from. Alan Moore is no stranger to being screwed over by big companies. Between the rights shenanigans with DC Comics over Watchmen and the sporadic track record with films like V for Vendetta and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So it really means a lot when his assessment of Playground is nothing short of glowing. He says he's connected with people who respect him and the narrative he's written. And Playground has a good track record too. This is the same team behind PBS Masterpiece and a bunch of BBC shows like Wolf Hall, King Lear, and All Creatures Great and Small. Picking up The Great When is part of a whole expansion strategy into new genres like comedy and fantasy. They plan to adapt this into a multi-season show. So you can bet that when The Great When finally makes it to screen, it'll be very worth all of our time. But coming up this week, rejoice! The War of the Rohirrim gallops into theaters on Thursday. We also have Secret Level premiering on Amazon Prime this Tuesday, and we slept on this anime for nearly the whole season, but we would be remiss if we didn't tell you about Magilumiere Magical Girls Inc., an anime about magical girls doing the job part of fighting monsters day in and day out. Okay, that'll do it for another jam-packed week in fantasy movies. Go check out War of the Rohirrim. It's a mostly original story made by talented artists and backed by a major studio. Why would you miss that? But even if you don't take our advice and skip it for some reason, we'll have more in fantasy movies next week.